watching the recording. This is an LSAT study session. My computer only had 52%, got it. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Hi, Fern, I see. I cannot see your names. Hi, Apple TV. What's the other one? Hi, Pedro. Hey, Andre. Hi, everybody. I'm typing out an email, and then I'm going to be doing some LSAT studying. So it's gonna get quiet in a minute when I start my studying, but I have to type out this email. But how's everyone doing this morning? Hopefully you guys are having a good morning. Remember, be productive as well. Schedule. For some reason, I'm into scheduling emails. I know it may be weird for some people, but I just find that it's a little easier so I don't forget. So I need to get my charger because for some reason normally I charge my computer throughout the night so it has 100, but it only has like 43%. So that's weird. What are you guys saying? Hey, Allie. Hi guys. Welcome. So for the new people now tuning into the live, if you've never been in a Uniquely Mia live before, hi everyone, I'm Uniquely Mia, also known as Mia, graduate student studying public administration, criminal justice. I'm also studying for the LSAT right now. If you are a returning viewer, returning subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel and welcome back to Uniquely Mia Live. Hopefully you enjoy this one. This one will be a quiet one for the most of the time because I am like studying for the LSAT. I'm using 7 Sage. It's okay. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like go through the whole 7 Sage program again, and then once I do that, I'm going to look for another application. I may try like LSAT Demon, but I want to go through all this again because I'm like starting over. Like I took the LSAT, but I'm going to start over and study again. So this is the method that I'm using. So if you guys want to follow me along on my journey, remember, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, guys. We're on our way to 2,000. Oh, you're becoming one of my new subscribers? Thank you so much. So let's get into it, guys. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. Just studying. Also, as the because it's mostly consists of watching videos, so you will see me with this book and like just writing random stuff or drawing random stuff. I know it looks crazy, but I saw this video on TikTok and this girl was studying for the MCAT, like the medical school entrance exam, and she said doing this really helped her. Because it allowed her to like stay focused. I don't know how, but I did it towards the end of like my LSAT studying before I actually took the test, and I was surprised with my score. So I'm like, hopefully it does something. So I think it helps a little bit. So I'm not like paying attention if you see me drawing this. I'm implementing like a new study method that hopefully works somehow. So let's get into it. I'm not going to do any drills now. I'll do drills later. I want to go through the syllabus. Okay. I already saw the answer. Doesn't make sense to try and do that practice question.
Okay, let's see how you did on this question, which once again is a main conclusion question. I want you to try this question to reveal to you that the LSAT writers are quite aware of shortcuts, okay, of tricks. In this particular instance, the shortcut that some people might attempt to take advantage of is the glaring presence of this conclusion indicator word, thus. Okay, thus, it's very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. You might just decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to read any of this stuff. I see a big thus here. I know thus indicates conclusions. So there we go. I found the conclusion. Now look at the answers, and lo and behold, E is almost verbatim this thing here. So I'm just going to circle it and move on. And you would have fallen hook, line, and sinker for a trap. Now, we've seen complex arguments before. No doubt, this is a conclusion. Is it the main conclusion? Well, the only way to find out is to actually read the entire stimulus, okay? So, Florist is talking to us. Florist says, look, some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day, but, again, indicates switch over from context. Now that we have the setup, we're ready to hear her argument, right? But she said flowers that are naturally green are really rare. Most of the time, the claim that follows the but is however the transition word is the conclusion claim, but here it's not. You get this, I mean, look, there's one indicator that this is not the claim. The other is that, the florist doesn't really try to convince you. Like, oh, I don't believe you. Prove to me that flowers that are naturally green are extremely rare. She doesn't. She's like, okay, you don't believe me? See you later. I'm not even going to try to convince you of this claim. So you see, this claim receives no support, and so it cannot be a conclusion. Right? Rather, it's just a premise. So this question bucks a lot of trends that we've seen, right? Which is a good reminder that while there are a lot of things that are repetitive on the test, you still have to engage with the text. Right? The florist says, look, flowers that are naturally green are extremely rare. Therefore, thus, it's very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. So, premise supporting this conclusion. Now, if the florist just stopped talking, right, this is it, this is the end of the stimulus, well, then, yeah, E would 100% be the right answer because it paraphrases the conclusion almost verbatim. But there's more to the passage. She says, before St. Patrick's Day, then, it is wise for florists to stock up on white carnations, which are fairly inexpensive and quite easy to dye green. What's the relationship between this last sentence to the rest of this? We know the context is set up for us that people like green carnations on St. Patrick's Day, but you're telling me that, let's say I'm a fellow florist, right? I'm listening to this you florist. You're telling me that it's wise for me to stock up on white carnations before saying, well, you just said some people like green carnations. Why? Right? And there, asking the why question reveals my suspicion that this is actually the conclusion, right? That this is actually the main conclusion. And if you play this out, the rest of it makes sense. Here's one reason why you want to stock up on white carnations, because they're fairly inexpensive and really easy to dye green. See, people like green carnations, you can just take the white carnations and make them green, cheap and easy. Well, wait, why don't I just get green carnations to begin with? Here, this is why you can't do that. Subconclusion, major premise supporting the main conclusion, because it's just very difficult to get green carnations. So on the one hand, super difficult to get green carnations. On the other hand, super easy and cheap to take white carnations and make them green. Within the context of people liking green carnations St. Patrick's Day, you see how the conclusion follows. Before St. Patrick's Day, then, it is wise for florists to stock up on white carnations. Answer choice A does a great job of paraphrasing that. It's a good idea, right? Good idea. For wise. Same thing? No, not identical, but close enough for florists to stock up. And the rest of it is fairly verbatim. Now for the other three answers, B, flowers naturally green are very rare. That's a minor premise, right? That's this claim over here, minor premise. There are some people who like that's just the context, right? That's this claim over here, the context. And D, white carnations are fairly inexpensive, can easily dye green is one of the major premises down over here. Okay, so this question is also kind of difficult, but in a way that's different from the previous question that was difficult. Previously, the question was difficult because the content was actually just hard to understand. This question is difficult because of tricks, right? What I think of as tricks. They really did try to trick you. But hopefully engaging in this argument in a way that we've been doing, like, for example, identifying the context, with this but, transitioning into argument, identifying the complex argument structure allowed you to see past this trick.
Welcome to all the new people. I am studying for the LSAT right now. If you guys don't have anything nice to say to each other, guys, remember we communicate to each other respectfully on the live. Why am I scribbling? Because it aids in your study method. I did some research, saw a video, and most people who study, scribbling allows you to pay attention a little bit more. Conclusions or inferences can't be drawn, guys, from one scene. Remember, in research, for valid conclusions and inferences or assumptions to be drawn, things need to be measured at multiple time points. First to conclusion. Right now we're gonna do a blind review. That's basically re-answering the questions I just answered before I see my score. And blind reviews are untimed, so you're able to actually take your time and reflect on the answers and your answer choice. More or less, humans have a natural disposition to altruism, that is, to behavior that serves the needs of others. Okay, so humans have a natural need to engage in behavior that serves the needs of others, regardless of one's own needs. Okay, but that very disposition prevents some altruism, some acts of altruism from acting as moral. questions though. For a long question, I like to write down questions in the book.
Okay, let's take a look at a real fill-in-the-blank main conclusion, most strongly supported hyper question. And I know that was a mouthful, so let me unpack that a bit. When I say fill in the blank, I'm just describing the question type, right? The question type will say which one of the following most logically completes the argument. And you'll actually see a blank. Physically, there will be a blank present. So that's how you know it's a fill in the blank. Now, of the fill in the blank type of question, there are subtypes. We're looking at the most strongly supported main conclusion kind. How do we know that's a subtype? Well, that has to do with the words that are around the blank. Namely, this word, therefore, which tells us, hey, you know what goes in the blank? What goes in the blank is whatever is receiving the support from the statements that preceded, right? That's how we know this is a most strongly supported main conclusion fill in the blank question. Okay, so one other thing I want to do before we look at this, I want you to consider all the answer choices without looking at the claims that are giving support. And I want you to just realize how impossible it is to decide between these answer choices. If I asked you to most logically complete the argument and I just give you a therefore blank, let's take a look at A. Younger killer whales are better able to tolerate engine noise from boats than older whales are. I don't know. Who has better tolerance? Do younger killer whales have better or older ones? I mean, I can imagine our world is such that younger ones have better tolerance because they have better regenerative powers, or maybe it's older ones have better tolerance because they've had more time to, well, tolerate, to become used to noise. Okay, so let's look at B. Killer whales are less likely to communicate with one another when both engines are operating. Again, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no, right? And I think you get my point. If you keep going with C, D, and E, it'll be the same. They're never going to give you something like crazy. E is never going to say something like, oh, night is day, right? Which is like, okay, no. Rather, all the answer choices are going to say something that, like, yeah, could be true or could be false. I just don't know. And that's the crucial difference between the wrong answers and the right answer. Once you read the other statements, one of these answers will have its likelihood of being true dramatically changed in the positive direction. Okay, now most of the wrong answers will have their likelihood of being true stay just about the same. And perhaps some of them will actually have their likelihood of being true go down because they tend to like contradict something, right? But that's what I mean when I say now we have to engage, really engage with this idea of support to truly understand what does it mean for a set of claims to support another claim. And remember when we defined what it means to support, we said a set of claims supports another claim when the truth of these claims make it more likely that this other claim will be true. Okay, so let's take a look at the claims. Engine noise from boats traveling through killer whale habitats range in frequency from 100 Hz to 3000 Hz, and acoustic range that overlaps that in which the whales communicate through screams and squeals. Wow, that's a long sentence. Let's break this down. Grammar time. What's the subject here? Noise. What kind of noise? Oh, engine noise. All engine noise? Nope. From boats, right? Oh, from engine noise from all sorts of boats? Nope. Boats that are traveling through killer whales' habitats, right? Those boats. Highly specific subject. That kind of engine noise. Now here comes the predicate. What about? What were we trying to say about this engine noise? Well, its frequency range is between 100 Hz to 3000 Hz. Oh yeah, that means a lot to me. I completely understand. You too, right? You understand the significance of the, right? Okay, so my point is that the LSAT writers won't do you like that, right? They're not gonna be like, haha, you don't know what hertz means, you don't know what kilohertz, well, like, no, like if there's something technical, they'll generally define it, or they'll tell you the significance of it. Okay, so the significance of the fact that the noise has a frequency range between 100 Hz and 3000 Hz is that that's the same acoustic range, right? It's the same acoustic range in which whales communicate through screams and squeals. All right, so I got it. Whales communicate through screams and squeals. That acoustic range of their scream and squeals just happens to be the same range that the engine noise from boats that travel through their habitats are in. Okay, let's keep going. Though, oh, I know this word. Though indicates what? Indicates a throwaway. Not really a throwaway, but a concession point. Okay, I say throwaway to emphasize that insofar as making the argument, it's a quote-unquote throwaway, but it's really just a concession point. The author is saying, yeah, I know, like, my opponents might bring this point up, so I'm just gonna get in front of it, and make it myself. Look, killer whales don't seem to behave differently around running boat engines. Okay, but here's the point I really want to make. Engine noise from boats can be loud enough to damage their hearing over time, right? It is possible that these engine noises that they can actually hear, right, because it's in the same frequency range, are loud enough to damage their hearing over time. So using this as premise 1, using this as premise 2, what is the claim that is being supported by these two premises? Now we can look at the answers. So A, we already read A. I remember it said younger whales have better tolerance for engine noise than older whales do. Before reading all this information, I had no idea. After reading this information, I still have no idea. The information here does not distinguish between younger whales and older whales. So having understood all of this information, I still don't know which of you is better able to tolerate engine noise. That's what it means to not be supported. Okay, so if you'll recall, the spectrum of support where right in the middle is merely consistent with, and all the way at the end is must be true, and over here is must be false, and of course right in the middle is perfectly balanced between could be true or could be false. And this is the half of the spectrum we call supported, and this is the half of the spectrum we call anti-supported, right? This is the anti-supported, this is the supported half of the spectrum. A sits right over here. It's just consistent with it. Given that all this information is true, the likelihood of A being true doesn't change. Maybe it's true, maybe it's false. This is the most typical kind of wrong answer choice you're going to see in this question type and in most strongly supported question types. Now, consider B. Killer whales are less likely to attempt to communicate with one another when boat engines are operating nearby. What do you think about this? Sounds reasonable, right? You know, boat engines are loud, right? They're loud enough that hearing damage could result. You know they can hear it because it's in the same frequency range. So isn't it reasonable to say that they're less likely to attempt to communicate? Well, the answer is no. It is not reasonable. If you think this is true, you're trying to support B with information outside of the passage. For example, here's a thought you might have had. I know that when I'm walking down the street and there's street construction, I'm less likely to talk with my walking buddy until either the construction stops or we pass it, right? Because it's just loud. I can't hear him as well, probably can't hear me as well, right? So yeah, seems reasonable killer whales would do the same, right? Wrong. Wrong because what did we just do there? We made an argument by analogy where we used outside information to try to support B. And remember, all arguments by analogy live or die based on how closely analogous the two situations are to each other, and we're making a bunch of assumptions about how closely analogous. Right? For example, we're assuming that the street construction noise is as loud as the engine noise from the boats. Is that true or false? The information in here doesn't tell you. They only say engine noise can be loud enough to damage. What threshold of loudness is that? Is that enough to interfere with their communication, to make communication annoying, irritating, so that the whales don't want to do it? I don't know. You see what I mean? Like, it's very dangerous. Tempting, yes, but dangerous. To try to come up with your own reasons and try to smuggle in all these assumptions that are not actually in the text, okay, to support an answer choice. So B is not supported. And before you want to place B like right over here where, oh, could be true, could be, I'm actually going to say that, you know what, B probably sits over here in the anti-supported range. And the reason is because of this claim. They actually told you that it looks like killer whales don't seem to behave differently around boat engines, whereas B is trying to say that, oh, wait, they do behave differently when boat engines are nearby. I don't know about that. Now, C says noise from boat engines may impair killer whales' ability to communicate. Note how different this claim is from A and B. Whereas before reading any of these claims, we had no idea if this is true. Now, upon reading all these claims, you see how the truth tendency of this claim just skyrockets. Far more likely now that C is true. C sits right over here. You have to piece together a couple of bits of information. How do whales communicate? Acoustically, with their ears, with hearing. What do engine noise do? They can be loud enough to damage their hearing. You put the two and two together, engine noise may, right? Notice that even in the strength, it matches the premise. May impair their ability to communicate. Now, the LSAT writers took care to word this. They didn't say something silly like noise from boat engines definitely will impair ability to communicate. What? I mean, if it said that, that cannot be supported because the premise is just not strong enough. Can be loud enough. Oh, it definitely will. Nope. But you see, the LSAT writers are very careful about this. Now, D says killer whales are most likely to prefer areas where boat traffic is present but light. Over what? Prefer this type of area over what? It's left implied over areas where there's no boat traffic present, right? They prefer light traffic over zero traffic, over medium traffic, over heavy traffic, right? Like, what's your preference? Their favorite is light traffic. Okay, maybe that's true, maybe that's false. I have no idea. D is the same as A. Could be true, could be false, I just don't know. It doesn't look like they behave differently when boat engines are present, so it doesn't look like they've revealed whether they have a preference for this or not. So yeah, maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Having read all this stuff, I am none the wiser about whether or not D is true. Again, that is the essence of what it means to be not supported, okay? Not supported. Please try to distinguish answer choices A and D from answer choice B, which is not merely not supported, it's anti-supported, right? It seems to go against information in the passage. And lastly, E says killer whales would probably be more successful in finding food if the boats did not travel through the habitats. Again, I don't really know if that's true. The boats that travel through their habitat that emit this engine noise, what other effects do they have? Or forget other effects, just consider this effect that they emit engine noise. Is that good for their hunting prospects or is that bad for their hunting prospects? I have no idea. Maybe it helps them. Maybe it like deranges their prey so that their prey, they're just sitting there waiting for the whales to scoop them up. So, you know, maybe whales love these boats for making hunting easier. Or maybe not. Maybe it does the opposite. Maybe it scares all the prey away. Right? So you see, I'm just making stuff up because, well, because the information is not present. Okay, so E joins the ranks of A and D and sits right here. Could be true, could be false, merely consistent with the information in the passage and not supported by the information in the passage.
Which one of the following was logically complete story? Hotspots.
Okay, let's see how you did on this question. Once again,
Welcome, welcome. I know some new people joined in. Welcome, welcome, Brian. Keep going. Welcome, G. Welcome, Arnell. Welcome, Olivia. I'm doing some LSAT studying right now using 7 Sage. So there's drills, practice questions, and then there's videos with like example questions and explanations. Somebody just sent me an email. I'm going to respond to his email really quickly, and then I'm going to get back to it. Wait, my charger fell. I have to see the email on my iPod, and I'll type out my response. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just like some LSAT studying, guys. Hey guys, alrighty. Let me see something. go back to it.
We'll start with the question stem, which is identical to the last question stem. Logically completes argument. You see this blank, so you know it's a fill in the blank. Now, how do we know this is a fill in the blank with some information that receives support? Well, also, just like in the previous question, is because of this word thus, right? Thus, and here the outside writers are doing something cheeky. They interjected a premise, but really, this interjected premise could have appeared before the thus, and they could have just said thus, it would be reasonable for organizations to do what? And if I cover up the rest of the stimulus, it becomes much clearer that we're looking for something that receives support. And, in fact, the first half of the claim has already been supplied to us. We are just asked to look through the answer choices to supply the second half of the claim. And once again, without looking at the stimulus, I want us to just kind of go through the answer choices and consider the reasonableness of each answer choice, right? Thus, it would be reasonable for organizations dedicated to preserving species. So, conservationists, right? It would be reasonable for conservationists to do what? To try to help only those species who are threatened with extinction because of habitat loss, as opposed to, say, what, pollution? I don't know, maybe. Right? I really want to know what this is saying over here in order to evaluate whether this makes sense, whether this follows, whether this is supported. Because right now, I don't know. Maybe it would be reasonable for conservationists to concentrate their resources on protecting hotspots. I don't even know what hotspots are. So yeah, maybe not. I don't know. Would it be reasonable for conservationists to treat all endemic species, I don't know what endemic species are, equally valuable and equally, again, maybe. How about accept that most endemic species will become extinct? This one I feel like probably not. Seems kind of weird, but who knows? Maybe, they make some argument where, yeah, it is the reasonable action to take, which is basically do nothing. Just accept that these species will go extinct. Right? And E says, expand the definition of hotspot to include vulnerable habitats. Again, yeah, maybe. And then F says, kill all the pandas. What's this answer? There's no way this could be right. Okay, so that's gone. Now the point is that they're never going to give you an answer choice like that. All of these answer choices will at least potentially be reasonable until you actually read the stimulus. Once you read the stimulus and you understand the stimulus correctly, the correct answer choice will have its likelihood of being true skyrocket. Right? Versus the other answer choices either will have their likelihood of being true unchanged or perhaps even go in the opposite direction, way less likely to be true. Let's take a look at this stimulus. Hotspot is a term that ecologists use to describe those habitats with the greatest concentration of species found only in one place, so-called endemic species. Okay. I'm already kind of lost because vocabulary, right? New terminology. Endemic species. What are endemic species? Hotspots. What are hotspots? So before just plowing ahead, you just have to stop and take stock of what these new terms mean. They always tell you everything you need to know. So what are endemic species? Well, just look around. A species found only in one place. That's the definition of endemic species. Now, to make sure this definition sticks, remember to translate. Try to come up with examples. So lemurs that are only found in Madagascar, that's an example of endemic species. Pandas that are only found in southwest China, that's an example of endemic species. Right? So that's what endemic, now I have a better handle, right? Because this term feels more sticky now. Like I get it. I know what endemic species are. Okay, next term, what's a hotspot? Well, hotspot is a term that ecologists use to describe those habitats. So hotspot describes not animals, but rather locations, or habitats, with the greatest concentration of endemic species. Okay. All right, so, lemurs and pandas, obviously they're separated by vast distances, but other endemic species that I don't know of, apparently lots of them are concentrated, and the areas with the highest concentration of endemic species, those areas are called hotspots. Now I feel like I can say I understand the first sentence. Let's move on. Many of these hotspots are vulnerable to habitat loss due to commercial development. Okay, well that's sad. Furthermore, loss of endemic species account for most modern day extinctions. Okay, so modern day extinctions, most of them come from what? Come from endemic species extinctions. Okay, so that's also sad. And right before we get to the conclusion, there's one more premise. Given that only a limited number of environmental battles can be waged, meaning conservationists are resource constrained, right? They don't have infinite money, they don't have infinite political power. They have limited resources. It would be reasonable for them to do what? Right, to do what? Now, depending on how well you piece together all this information, you might actually be able to go hunting for the right answer choice. So here, let's rearrange the information, and in so doing, expose one of the LSAT writer's favorite tricks. Okay, so let's say the information was rearranged in this manner. First, I tell you that most modern day extinctions come from endemic species extinctions. Right, so if modern day extinction is a problem for you, you want to solve that, well, most of it is coming from endemic species, losing endemic species. Okay, that's the first piece of information. Second piece of information, area where you find the greatest concentration of endemic species are called hotspots. Okay, so let's review. We have the problem of modern day extinction. Most of it is because of endemic species loss. Hey, it just so happens that there are some areas with great concentrations of endemic species, and those areas are called hotspots. Third piece of information, of all the hotspots, some subset of them, right, some subset of these hotspots are in danger of habitat loss. Fourth piece of information, as conservationists, we are resource constrained. Okay, so then, given that we have limited resources, where should we dedicate our preservation efforts? To hotspots. I mean, all I did here was I just rearranged the information. This piece of information came from here. This piece of information came from here. This piece of information came from here. So I gave it to you in 1, 2, 3, and then 4 in order, which naturally leads to the conclusion of, well, focus on the hotspots. Duh. But that's not how they did it. Look, they gave us 2, and then they gave us 3, and then they gave us 1, and then they gave us 4. Why? Well, to confuse us, naturally. Now, with that said, B should come as no surprise. Concentrate their resources on protecting hotspot habitats. Given all this information, my evaluation B changes. Used to be that, I don't know, right? I was like, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. I don't even know what hotspots are. Now that I've read all this, I'm like, yeah, definitely. B is super strongly supported. Let's look at C, which is a really interesting answer choice. Treat all endemic species as equally valuable, equally in need of preservation. No, that completely misses the point. This is not only unsupported, it seems to be anti-supported. The whole point is that we have limited resources, so we want to get the most bang for our buck, so to speak. And look, I mean, we are kind of in luck because endemic species aren't uniformly spread out through the world. They actually are found in clusters and concentrations. And these concentrations are called hotspots, so naturally it makes sense for us to spend our limited resources on the hotspots. So no, don't treat all of them equally. That doesn't make sense. And D says, accept that most endemic species will be extinct. No, that's not supported. What, you think we said all this just to get at the conclusion? Oh, therefore just, sit back, watch the anthropocentric extinction and enjoy some popcorn while you're at it. Absolutely not. Whatever fills in the blank is a call to action, to do something, not just to sit back and accept that the extinction is inevitable. And E says, expand the definition of hotspot to include vulnerable habitats that are not currently home to many endangered species. Wait, why would we expand the definition of hotspot? I mean, look, hotspot is already defined, and then they define endemic species, and then they tell you hotspots are vulnerable, and then tell you that endemic species count for, do something like, okay, all of this stuff points to something, but it doesn't say, oh, well, then you should expand the definition of hotspot. Based on the information in the passage, there's nothing wrong with the current definition of hotspot. Right now, I think what E is doing is he is psychologically appealing or attempting to appeal to you. If you are of the persuasion of a environmental activist, a conservationist, right? And you get the sense that having a location designated as a hotspot helps your cause, well then of course you want to expand the definition of hotspot. But back up a second and catch yourself. What does any of that have to do with answering the question? Nothing, right? Nothing. You gotta be really careful about this. Outside writers are super good at setting out psychologically attractive baits. And lastly, answer choice A, I think, is probably the most attractive but wrong answer choice. It says try to help only those species who are threatened with extinction because of habitat loss. Now, modifier, right? Modifier time. What species are we trying to help? And only those species? Well, species who are threatened with extinction because of habitat loss. So if you're any other kind of species, for example, you're a species who are threatened with extinction because of pollution. Nope, sorry, out of luck. We're not trying to help you. That's what we're trying to do. I'm not sure about that, right? Now the other thing is, we're trying to help this specific, right, this set of species, only this set of species, right, the species who are threatened with extinction because of habitat loss. Now, that's not even precise enough, because who are we really trying to help? A subset of those species, a subset of species threatened with extinction because of habitat loss, namely the endemic species that live in hot spots, right? That's who we're trying to help, and that's what B is talking about. Let's take a look at another fill-in-the-blank question. Notice the question stems, same words, most logically complete. And if you trace this sentence all the way back to the beginning, you'll notice this word thus, which is a conclusion indicator, and the same old trick where they interject a claim to separate the conclusion indicator from the actual conclusion. So we are trying to fill in the blank with a claim that is supported by the information in the stimulus. Okay, so same question that we've been doing, same type of question that we've been doing up to this point. Let's take a look. Swimming pools should be fenced to protect children from drowning, but, oh, great, but this is context. Here we have our argument, and most likely this can be the conclusion, right, because we've seen this a trillion times by now, but teaching children to swim is even more important. Okay, why? Why is teaching children to swim even more important than, why not just protect the children, with a fence? And there's a principle involved here, applies to child rearing. Okay, thus, wait, what's going on? Thus, while we should restrict children, wait, hold on a second, something is not right. None of what I'm reading here is affirming my guess that this was the conclusion, and it's really important that you realize this. Okay, while it's true that a lot of the time, this kind of framing where you encounter but and you just go, oh, everything before is context, everything after is argument, and most likely this is a conclusion, while that is true, like, what, 90% of the time? It's not always true. So you can't just go into this blind autopilot mode. Okay, so as it turns out, but here is being used in a different way. I mean, this but is just a normal but, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with normal buts. I like normal buts, right? And what it's doing here is that it's just setting up a contrast between this idea, this first idea, and this second idea, right? One idea is, hey, you know what? Let's fence swimming pools as a way to protect children. Another idea is, well, you teach children how to swim. Also as a way to protect children from drowning, right? And they're saying that these two ideas, look, this one is even more important, which means this one's important, but this other one is even more important. Okay, and now this next sentence tells us that in laying out this relationship, there's some general principle that applies to child rearing. I wish the LSAT writers would just explicitly tell me what that principle is, because it saves me work, but they don't. See, they hint at the existence of some general principle, right, of which this swimming pool example is just one particular application of this general principle. And look now how they change subjects, right? This principle gets applied to some other situation. What's the other situation? Now, I'm not showing the answer choices, but there are a lot of trap answer choices that turn on your inability to properly identify the noun as opposed to the modifiers of the noun. Okay, so let's do this grammar thing, right? While we should restrict children's access to what, right? To what? I know there are a lot of words here, but if you could reduce all these words to just like one or two words, what are we trying to restrict children's access to? Is it television? No, it's not. It's sweet stuff, right? It's food or drinks, right? You see, this is the modifier of the sweet stuff. We should restrict children's access to sweet stuff. All sweet stuff? Well, no. Here they're saying just the sweet stuff, just a subset of sweet stuff that's advertised on television shows directed toward children. It's really important that you realize that that's the noun here. We're actually talking about sweets. Okay, so that's the grammar point. But now back to this question. It is even more important, right? It's even more important to what? Just like how over up here, it was even more important to do this. Yes, it's important to do this, but it's even more important to do this. Here we're saying, yes, it's important to do this, but it's even more important to do what? Does this sound a bit familiar in terms of what kind of argument it is? You're trying to analogize these two situations, right, by appealing to some shared principle of child rearing. So let's do two things here. I want to make explicit this analogy, and I also want to make explicit what the principle is. Okay, now I know this question doesn't require the second act because they're actually just asking us to make explicit what the analogy is. You can leave the principle unstated, implicit. That's okay. But you know what? We're not really just trying to get question 4 right. Rather, we're trying to deepen our understanding of logical reasoning. And there will be questions in logical reasoning down the road which ask you to make explicit the principle that underlies certain stimuli. So let's practice, right? Okay, first, what is the analog to swimming pools? The thing that is shared is, in some sense, protecting children. That's the thing that's shared between these two situations. Okay, but what's the analog to swimming pools? Well, we already said it's sweet stuff. Okay, so in the first instance, what is the important but less important thing? Well, you fence in the swimming pool as a way to protect children from the dangers of swimming pool, which is drowning. So, okay, we say that here. We, in a sense, fence in the sweet stuff by restricting children's access, a metaphorical fence around the sweet stuff as a way to protect them. Okay, so that's analogized. Now on to the more important stuff. Teach children to swim. See, that's different from fencing swimming pools off from children. Here you're actually giving children access. You're allowing them to access the thing that's potentially dangerous, but you're teaching them to protect themselves. So how do we do that here? How do we fill in the blank with words to the effect that we're teaching them to protect themselves from sweet stuff? Let's consider these two answers. How to make nutritional choices that are conducive to their well-being versus the importance of physical activity to health and well-being. Which one is about teaching them how to protect themselves from sweet stuff? C is how to make nutritional choices, how to choose the foods that you eat so that your health is protected. D is also about protecting your health, but not through food choices. D is about protecting your health through exercise. So now I want you to consider the other 3 wrong answer choices, A, B, and E, and notice what they have in common. They're all about television, right? They're trading on that potential grammar confusion that I warned against when we evaluated the stimulus, right? E is broader than just television. E is about like how you can entertain yourself without watching television. No, again, we're trying to teach children how to make smart choices about the kinds of things they eat. Okay, so that's the analogy part. Now let's make explicit. I mean, let's try at least to make explicit the principle. Do you think you can formulate the principle such that it can apply to both situations? I'll get you started. Okay, so it is important, while it is important, for adults to take actions that offer external protection for children from potential harms. It is even more important for adults to teach children to what? To protect themselves, to internalize those protections. You see, if we stated out the principle that way, it applies to teaching children how to swim. That's them protecting themselves from the danger of drowning, right? They've internalized that protection. To teach them how to make nutritional choices that are conducive to, again, they've internalized it. They're going to protect themselves.
Government intervention in the free market in pursuit of socially desirable goals can affect supply and demand, thereby distorting prices. The ethics of such intervention is a matter of Okay, let's see how you did on this question. Hopefully you're able to identify some similarities between this one and the one we just did. Whereas last time we were looking at the analogy between dangers posed by swimming pools versus dangers posed by eating too much sweet stuff. Here we're looking at an analogy between government intervention and medicinal intervention. Okay, so let's take a look at the economist's claims. Government intervention in the free market in pursuit of socially desirable goals can affect supply and demand, thereby destroying prices. Oh, geez, okay, 3-line sentence, kind of abstract ideas. So a lot of our lessons about, well, let's first talk about grammar. Where's the subject? Where is the predicate? And the subject is government intervention. It's modified. Government intervention where? In some foreign country for some security concern? No. We're talking about government intervention in the free market in pursuit of socially desirable goals. That kind of government intervention, that's the subject. Modified, right? That kind of government intervention, where is the action? Where's the predicate? Where's the verb? Well, here it is. Can affect supply and demand. And through affecting supply and demand, can distort prices, right? So that's what we're saying on the outside of this sentence. We're just saying government intervention can distort prices, right? Okay, let's unpack it. Open up the box and reveal the details. Okay, well, how is it distorting prices? Well, through affecting supply and demand. Okay, great. What kind of government intervention? In the free market in pursuit of socially desirable goals. Great. That's the grammar part. Now, try to make a stick, right? Can you make this stick? Come up with an example. For me, because I live in New York, the first
thing that comes to mind in terms of government intervention is rent stabilization, right, or rent control, where it's a government policy that for certain units in certain apartment buildings, landlords just can't raise rent above whatever level, right? And so that's an intervention in what would otherwise be a totally free market. But that intervention is precisely in pursuit of the socially desirable goal of affordable housing, right? Access to housing. But that intervention, yeah, of course it affects supply and demand, and of course it distorts prices. For example, landlords might feel like, well, okay, since these units I can't charge as much, I have to raise prices on these other units, on the free market units, right? So that's something I want you to get into the habit of doing when you're encountering these abstract ideas. Try to bring it down to earth. Try to use what you know. Try to come up with an example. You might not always be able to do it. You might not even do it right, but that's okay. You gotta try, right? Because that's how you start to really understand what you're reading. You translate it into what you know. Okay, let's keep going. The ethics, right? The ethics of such intervention, referential phrasing. Now that we talked about the intervention, now let's go above that and say, hey, the ethics of such intervention. Should governments do it? When is it right for them to do it? When is it not right for them to do it? Well, the economist is saying the ethics of the intervention is comparable to that of administering medicine. That's a totally different view. So the economist is saying, oh, you know what? You want to know when it's right, when it's not right, go ask doctors. This is when you should know that this is an argument by analogy, right? Because we're analogizing government intervention with administering medicine, right? Okay, most medicines have harmful as well as beneficial effects, right? Yes. So the use of a type of medicine is ethically justified only when its non-use would be significantly more harmful than its use. Right here in this sentence, hopefully two bells are ringing. One is conditional logic. The other is comparative statements. Now, if you keep reading, you realize the conditional logic part of it is actually not important for getting this question right. Because, as you keep reading, it says, similarly, government intervention in the free market is justified only when. See, they don't even change up the logical indicator. Here, medicine is ethically justified only when something, government intervention, analogized to medicine, is justified only when something. Right? So you actually only need to focus on analogizing the comparative part. Right? That's the part that needs to fit in here. So let's get clear on this comparative. It's got a than. What are we comparing? Right? What are we comparing? We're comparing use of a medicine versus non-use, right? Use versus non-use. And what are we comparing it on? Well, harmfulness, right? Harm. How much harm is done? And over here, who, quote unquote, wins? Non-use would be significantly more harmful. So that non-use has to be not just a little bit more, but significantly more harmful. See, this claim is saying to use a medicine that has harmful as well as beneficial effects, it's ethically justified only when, right? Only when this comparative situation is satisfied. That is to say, not using it does significantly more harm than using it. And again, translate, right? Make this stick. Can you think of an example of a type of medicine where this is true? For me, I think of chemotherapy, which has beneficial and harmful effects. And it fits nicely here because it precisely satisfies this. If you use chemotherapy, it's definitely going to have some harmful effects. But if you don't use chemotherapy, it's going to be significantly more harmful. Okay, so one last thing I want to do is, remember that lesson on comparative statements, how they can be equivalently stated, just by changing the emphasis. Like, for example, I am older than you. That's a comparative statement. What's an equivalent way of saying that? You are younger than me. Okay, so I want you to do that with this. Right, so again, with non-use versus use, we're comparing it on harm. And if in the first iteration we said non-use significantly more harmful, then in this iteration, use is what? Significantly less harmful. That's the equivalent way of saying this. Okay, so now if you look at this, right, this last claim, similarly, government intervention in the free market is justified only when it, referring to what? It, referring to government intervention, would do less damage than would result.
I got 9%, guys. Alrighty, guys. We have been on live for a long time, so I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much, guys, for watching me study for a little bit on this live. Hello, Clemma. I'm doing good. How are you doing? Welcome, King. Welcome, Mazdo. Greetings, greetings, greetings to you. Hopefully you are going to have a great day. Make sure to be productive, active. Once I end live, I'll take a little break and then I'm gonna go to the gym. And then when I come back from the gym, wanna go to the mall Saturday. You know, I get buffalo wings on Saturday sometimes. And then I wanna see if they have like any online tutoring sessions today for within 7 Sage, so I'll look and see if they have, and if they have any that I can attend, I'll attend. If not, I'll just do some more practice questions and like watch some videos later. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, please like the video, subscribe if you are a returning subscriber. Thank you so much for your support, guys. Really appreciate it. If you are a new person, please consider subscribing to the channel, guys. And I'll be back with more videos soon. So have a great day, guys. Go watch my full-length YouTube videos and don't forget to subscribe.